Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Morgan, I was struck by something that you said in your written testimony, that every city in the United States is a border city when it comes to narcotic smuggling. That's something I think that many people, especially in the media, don't appreciate, and I just want to amplify that. In my own state of Missouri, 2017, the state estimated that 760 Missourians just in St. Louis, lost their lives to opioids. That is 1 in every 65 deaths in 2016. That number was higher. I know from law enforcement in my state, where I was recently Attorney General, that we are awash with methamphetamine. It's coming over the southern border. We have a serious fentanyl problem. It's coming over the border. We have a serious heroin problem. So is it safe to say that even interior states like Missouri are border states for purposes of narcotic smuggling?
Absolutely. And I'm a Missourian myself. I was born in Missouri. And so absolutely. Every single city in this country is a border city. Every single major metropolitan city and other rural are impacted by the crisis at the border. The drugs coming through the southwest border are entering every city in this country. That's not hyperbole, that's fact. 70,000 plus deaths, 90% of heroin coming from south of the border. The southwest border crisis is everybody's problem in this country.
Very well said, and I just want to underscore that it is local communities, often rural communities, as you point out, local law enforcement who are left to pick up the pieces here, and the costs really are staggering. Mr. Davidson, let me turn to you. Thank you for your outstanding reporting on this issue over many months. I just want to give you an opportunity to further tell this story here. Put this on the record for us. Who is it who controls the border on the southern side? Not on the U.S. side, but on the southern side. Who effectively controls that border?
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, this circles back to something we touched on earlier that I wanted to distinguish between there are smuggling networks and there are cartels. They're not necessarily the same organizations. The smugglers are paying cartels as part of the package that migrants and migrant families are providing. They have to include this tax, right? But there is no question that the border is secure on the southern side, and vast stretches of the border on the southern side are controlled in an iron-fisted way by cartel and cartel factions, especially when we're talking about the Gulf cartels. A lot of these cartels have broken up and fragmented over the past decade or so, especially in the Gulf region, across from the Rio Grande Valley, places like Reynosa, across the entire area south of there to Monterey, and so it used to be that people would cross the border to work in South Texas. They would literally put their clothes in a garbage bag, swim across the Rio Grande, go to work, and swim back across at the end of the day. That doesn't happen anymore. Nobody crosses the border unless the cartels say so and unless they get their payment.
Okay, that I think is such a key point, that the cartels effectively control the border and nobody crosses the border without their buy-in, their payoff, essentially. And this is why you refer to this operation on the southern side as a vast money-making machine. It's a money-making machine for the cartels and their various spinoffs. Is that correct? Explain that to us just a little bit more.
It's a money-making machine for the cartels because they are controlling who crosses, and nobody crosses unless they pay. It's also a money-making machine for the smuggling networks that begin in Central America. They're essentially like travel agents. They're just arranging logistics to get people from their locations in Central America across the Guatemala-Mexico border and then transiting through Mexico and paying off different people along the way, local officials, different cartel factions along the way, and then when they arrive to the northern border, paying off the right people so they can be allowed to cross the Rio Grande. And it is a controlled, intentional system along the northern border where cartels are holding people and telling them who is going to go across, how many people, what groups are going to cross where. It's coordinated, it's organized, and according to law enforcement, it's also coordinated with other drug smuggling activities in some areas where they're sending a large group across, tying up all of Border Patrol's resources, person a mile or two down the line sending across drugs or sending across people who are trying to evade detection who have paid a lot more money. So if you try to evade detection, you pay more and they cross you in a different area.
So it's very strategic, is what
Yes,
you're saying. I mean, it's not
absolutely.
you might get the sense from just looking at news footage that it's sort of chaos. I mean, it's the folks who are coming individually of their own accord.
It's
and
chaos on our side.
Right.
It's organized on their side.
on their side. You also say that the cartels are using kids as get into the U.S. free cards. Just explain that for us, if you would.
So it's hard to know for sure, right? And a lot of this is anecdotal, but if you have a child with you, you can claim asylum, and people on the south side of the border understand that, and they know that. So not all the minors that are accompanying adults and that are presenting themselves as family units are family units, and I'm sure Mr. Morgan can speak to that in more detail. But it certainly is known that if you cross with a child, you're going to be treated differently. And so the smuggling networks, the travel agencies that I mentioned earlier, they understand that, and they are incorporating that into their sales pitch, saying, you know, if you this is why a lot of people are showing up with just one child, where they have a wife and other children back in their home countries that they didn't bring with them because they could only afford to bring one.
Mr. Morgan, do you want to add to that?
So everything he just said was correct. And I would say go back to the chairman's chart, right? Big blue. That's why you're seeing big blue. And a lot of the stuff we're talking about, to some degree, with all due respect, it's white noise. Now, I'm not saying we don't need to do all this work with Mexico and Northern Triangle countries. Yep, E-Verify, all this stuff needs to be done. But until we fix Flores and until we fix TVPRA, that blue line is going to keep growing and growing, because they know, grab a kid, come in, set 1 foot on American soil, and you're in. If we don't fix that, it's not going to stop.
I just want to make sure that we get crystal clear and that the public understands that what's happening in my home state of Missouri with the drugs that we are facing, with the onslaught that we are facing, is directly tied to the behavior and strategy of these cartels on the border who control effectively the southern border, who have a strategy for conducting their business operations and who are making vast sums of money at our expense and at the cost of lives in our home states.
I'll give you one more quick example. So the cartel will actually send in an old military term called LPOP, observation posts and listening posts. They will actually send smugglers or cartel members miles into the interior of the United States side, miles, with communication, sophisticated communication devices, with surveillance equipment, and they will actually monitor the activities of the Border Patrol. And so they will actually then use the caravans, and right now, you're seeing some of these caravans actually go to really remote areas. The cartels are forcing them to traverse really adverse terrain. Why? So the Border Patrol has to take a long time to get there, and while they are, the LPOP says, clear to go into this section, and stuff's coming across.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
First of all,